Good morning, dear students. I am Miss NAVEDA SHAIKH from Brahan Mumbai Mahanagar Palika MCGM virtual class. I welcome all my dear students to another and interesting session. In today's session, we'll be learning something new and interesting from a science textbook. So let's get started. Good morning, dear students. I welcome all my dear students to another and interesting session. Our topic for today is environmental management. Now, as the name suggests, environmental management means we will be learning something related to our environment, our ecosystem, and how are we supposed to manage it and care for it properly in today's scenario. So, this is a very interesting chapter because it is related to our environment and to us also directly and indirectly. So, we are living in this environment. We need to know how are we going to protect it, how are we going to use it in a proper manner, and how are we going to manage it. So, let's get started and study about this interesting chapter. Now, when you look at this picture, I would like my students to observe this picture and see what other components that you can see. Now, if you go on listing, you can see that there is water, you can see there's sun, heat, there's land, you can see trees, you can see animals, you can see plants, you can see insects. Okay, so in this picture, you can see living things as well as non-living things, right? So living things and non-living things together form an ecosystem. What is an ecosystem? There's a question in a textbook which helps us to understand that an ecosystem is a community of living organisms interacting with each other and their non-living environment. Now, if I tell you that in this picture there is water, there is air, right, there's soil, these are non-living components, but they are extremely useful to the living things as well. Okay? So when these both things, that is the living things के अंदर भी interaction बहुत होता है, like plants, animals, there is a huge interaction amongst themselves and amongst the non-living components as well. And when they come together, that is called as an ecosystem. So what makes up an ecosystem? All living things like plants, animals and bacteria, non-living things like the sun, rock and soil. Now what is an ecosystem is clear to all my students. Now we will be learning which are the different types of ecosystem. Now this all you have already learned, but I'll just quickly revise which are the different ecosystem known to you all. The first ecosystem that we're talking about is grassland ecosystem. Here you can see that animals, plants, where you find abundant amount of grass and open space where you can find mostly wild animals. That type of ecosystem is called as grassland ecosystem. Then you have tundra ecosystem where you have, it is usually found in the North Pole and the South Pole region where you have great amount of snowfall and there's too much of the temperature is very low. Here, this type of ecosystem is called as tundra ecosystem. Next is marine ecosystem, which is related to the sea waters. Okay, the plants and animals surviving there are called as, that ecosystem is called as marine ecosystem. The next ecosystem is the desert ecosystem. Here, the different types of plants which are present in the desert region are very different from the normal plants that we see on land. Okay, that you see around you, that is very different from the cactus and other thorny plants which are found in the desert region. And apart from that, even the animal skin, their structure are very different, right? So this is another type of ecosystem, that is the desert ecosystem. Then you have freshwater ecosystem, which comprises of fresh water. Now remember, sea water, just the salty water that we talk about, is called as the marine ecosystem. Whereas streams, rivers, ponds and lakes, they have fresh water. Okay? It is not salty. So this type of water bodies which have plants and animals in them, this is called as freshwater ecosystem. The last one that we have learned is forest ecosystem. In forest, you have different types of animals and different types of insects, plants, huge variety of plants, insects, birds, animals, trees. Everything has a variety over there. So that type of ecosystem is called as forest ecosystem. Now there is also interaction between all animals and plants living in the forest, and hence it is called as a forest ecosystem. How do interaction take place between biotic and abiotic factors of an ecosystem? As I told you in the very beginning when we were learning about what is an ecosystem, I mentioned that there are two components, that is biotic and abiotic factors. Now as you see here, you can see first thing that is there is the sun and rain, soil. These are all non-living components, right? These non-living components are called as abiotic components. Whereas the living things that you can see like the plants, rabbit, antelope, and you can see a mouse, you can see birds, you can see animals like bear, wolf, squirrel. Now these are all living organisms. Okay? Even the mushroom and insects and worms, these are all living components, and that is why they are called as biotic components. Okay? So the biotic components refers to all life in an ecosystem. Ecosystem में जितनी भी living organisms है, that comes under biotic components. So based on nutrition, biotic components can be categorized as autotrophs, heterotrophs, and saprotrophs or decomposers. ठीक है, you have learned about what are autotrophs, you have learned about what is heterotrophs, what are saprophytes, you have learned about all this, okay? And if you do not remember, we'll just quickly revise about that as well. Now, abiotic components include sunlight, temperature, nutrients, wind, minerals, water, air. These are all things which come under abiotic components, which are extremely important for all the living things as well. Okay, so everything goes hand in hand. Everybody is dependent upon each other, whether living thing or non-living thing. So let's quickly revise about what is a producer. Now we have all learned that plants are the only source of energy to all living organisms. Why do I say this? Because animals cannot make their own food. Plants can make their own food in the presence of sunlight with the help of green colored pigment called chlorophyll present in leaves and using carbon dioxide and water from air. This process is called photosynthesis. Directly or indirectly, animals depend on plants for their food. Plants are the main support of every food chain. Okay, so producers are extremely important as I told you, because these are the only thing which can produce energy and absorb the energy from the sun, and in turn the animals depend upon them directly or indirectly. Okay, like herbivores need plants for the survival, whereas carnivores need the herbivorous plant animals which are dependent on plants. So that way plant are the basic thing which is required to in order to obtain energy by all living organisms. The next one that we have is the herbivores. Now if you see the animals which feed on grass or leaves or fruits, vegetables, they come under primary consumers or herbivores. Okay? So remember that this examples here, that is a grasshopper, squirrel, elephant, etc. They are directly dependent on autotrophs, that are the producers. ठीक है? तो जितने भी चीजें यहाँ पर आप लोग देख रहे हो वो सब producer पे directly dependent है. So here we have another level of organism, that are the carnivorous animals, and we all know that carnivorous animals depend upon herbivores for their food. Now predators, they are also called as predators. Okay, so predators like lion and tiger, which prevent the overpopulation of herbivores, are also equally important. Now imagine the level of herbivores. If they are increasing, what will happen? If herbivores are too much in our ecosystem, what will happen? The level of plants and trees are going to decrease, because जैसे अगर उन लोग खाने लगेंगे उतना सारा, अगर प्लांट्स खाते जाएंगे तो प्लांट्स की क्वांटिटी कम हो जाएगी, है ना, हमारे एनवायरनमेंट में, तो उससे इक्वल हमारा जो इकोसिस्टम है वो अनबैलेंस्ड हो जाएगा, सही तरीके से उसमें बैलेंस नहीं रहेगा. एंड दीज कार्निवरस एनिमल्स और द प्रेडेटर्स, दे ईट the herbivores and they are equally important in the ecosystem to maintain the बैलेंस। ठीक है, तो ये लोग क्या कर रहे हैं, कंट्रोल चेक कर रहे हैं ताकि ज्यादा हर्बीवोर्स की पॉपुलेशन ना हो जाए। ठीक है, तो दे आर ईटिंग इट एंड दैट इज हेल्पिंग द इकोसिस्टम ऑल्सो। Now, if you look at these two pictures, that is a bird's body is there and it is being eaten up by small insects, and in the other picture you see termites which are feeding onto the dead remains of a plant. Now, a question may arise in your mind that whether these insects or these filthy animals or insects which are surviving here, are they very important to us? Why are they present in the ecosystem? So the answer is yes, it is very important because these organisms are important in cleaning our environment. They are responsible for cleaning the environment. Why do I say this? Now just imagine if the dead bodies would have been like that only, if there were no insects, if there were no microorganisms to decompose the body, अगर ऐसी कोई भी insects और organisms नहीं होते जो ये dead bodies को खाते या decompose करने में help करते, तो क्या होता, आज हमारा जो planet है वो पूरी dead body से भरा हुआ होता। Yes or no? Over the years क्या हो रहा है, animals मरते हैं, plants मरते हैं, human beings are dying. So they will be, what will happen अगर animals insects नहीं होंगे, वो सब dead bodies एक के ऊपर एक लीप बन जाएगी। ठीक है, पूरा एक लेयर ऑफ प्लैनेट के ऊपर पूरी डेड बॉडीज लाई करती है अगर ये इंसेक्ट्स और ये माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स प्रेजेंट नहीं होते इकोसिस्टम में। तो ठीक है, सो दीज आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, ऑल्दो दे आर लिविंग इन डर्ट, ऑल्दो यू फील दे आर वेरी फिल्थी, so but then too they are equally important to our environment. Food chain, it is a very interesting topic here, so pay attention to it. The interaction which goes on continuously between the producers, consumers and saprophytes, there is a definite sequence in this interaction which is called the food chain. Now here if you see, the sun is producing energy and it is absorbed by the plants. Okay, the plants are giving this, is used, the energy produced by the plants are used by the primary consumers, and the primary consumers like the grasshopper is eaten up by the secondary consumer, that is the frog. Okay, this frog is the secondary consumer, is now eaten up by the tertiary consumer, that is the snake. Now when these animals die, they are decomposed with the help of fungus, bacteria and worms. Okay, so they form a chain. There is a proper chain that you see, and that is why it is known as a food chain. Okay, so I hope food chain is clear and understood to you all. Now there are a few examples of food chain here in this picture. You can see that there is a flower which is eaten up by a caterpillar, that is a consumer. Then this caterpillar eats the frog, that is another consumer. This frog is eaten up by a snake, and the snake is then eaten up by a owl. So this is a food chain. The next food chain is a maize, that is the producer. It's eaten up by a grasshopper or a locust. Now this is a primary consumer. This is another, then it is eaten up by another organism, that is a lizard. That is a secondary consumer, and this lizard is eaten up by a snake, that is the tertiary consumer. Same thing happens underwater also. You have living organism underwater as well, and they also have a food chain. So the primary consumers are small tiny plants which are there, and animals which are capable of producing energy by themselves because they possess chlorophyll in them. These are then eaten up by the primary consumers, that is the prawns or the shrimps that are there, which is then eaten up by the secondary consumer. Okay, slightly bigger fishes, and then tertiary consumers, and then quaternary consumers. Okay, you all can see how the level keeps on increasing. And this is how the food chain looks like. Next is the food web. An organism may be the prey for many other organisms. Now, um, if you keep a deer in front of a lion, a tiger, okay, cheetah, so here you can see that there are three different animals, but they can feed on the same deer, right? ऐसा नहीं है कि एक पर्टिकुलर ऑर्गेनिज्म है तो वो उसी को ही खाएगा, वो एक चेन ही चलेगी, नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है, बहुत सारी चेन्स एक दूसरे से इंटरकनेक्टेड होती है। ओके, Now suppose if there's a grasshopper को बहुत सारे animals खा सकते हैं, ठीक है, सिर्फ फ्रॉग खाए ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है. सेम वे अगर एक प्लांट है तो प्लांट को सिर्फ ग्रास ऑपर खाएगा या कैटरपिलर खाएगा ऐसा बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. देयर आर मेनी एनिमल्स व्हिच आर डिपेंडेंट ऑन प्लांट एंड दे कैन ईट देम. ओके, एंड देन this is interconnected with many other animals and plants as well. That is why there forms an intricate system over here. एक जो अगर फोटो देखोगे तो ये बहुत कंफ्यूजिंग फोटो दिखता है, जैसे कि एक वेब, ठीक है, वेब मीन द स्पाइडर वेब जब हम लोग देखते हैं तो इसी तरीके से दिखाई देता है ना, समझ में नहीं आता है कि कौन सी चीज कहाँ जा रही है. सो व्हेन एन ऑर्गेनिज्म falls a prey, it cannot fall a prey to only one animal at a time. ठीक है, देयर कुड बी मेनी अदर एनिमल्स एज वेल. तो उन सब के लिए वो एप्लीकेबल है, ये वो सब उसे खा सकते हैं. For example, an insect feeds upon leaves of various plants, but the same insect is the prey for different animals like frog, wall lizard, birds, etc. If this is to be shown in the figure like this, it will form an intricate web instead of a linear food chain. Such an intricate network is called a food web. Generally, food webs are found everywhere in nature. ठीक है, as I told you, अगर एक insect है तो जरूरी नहीं है कि insect ही plants को खाएंगे. There are other animals also which can eat plants, and then this chain keeps on getting confusing because कोई भी animal किसको भी खा सकता है, ऐसे particular ऐसा नहीं है कि इसी को ही खाएगा. If I talk about a bird or a snake, snakes rats को भी खा सकते हैं. Snakes can eat frogs also. Okay, they can even eat deer as well. ठीक है, so you cannot imagine how strong a python is. So that helps us understand about the food web. ठीक है, बहुत सारी food chains when they come together and they form an intricate system, it is called as a food web. Okay, so a few more examples of food web here. You can see in a desert food web, you can see the cactus plant, which is the primary producer, is eaten up by insects also, by snakes, by small lizard and kangaroo rats. They eat this primary producer. Now this kangaroo rat can be eaten up by a desert fox, it can be eaten up by a snake, it can be eaten by a hawk as well. Right? So एक animal को बहुत सारे animals खा सकते हैं. The snake is eaten up by a hawk or a desert fox. ठीक है, फिर यहाँ पे कंफ्यूजन हो रहा है, बट डू नॉट वरी, यू जस्ट हैव टू बी वेरी अटेंटिव व्हाइल ड्राइंग अ फूड वेब. ओके, टेकिंग अ वेरी सिंपल एग्जांपल. आप लोगों को एनिमल्स या फिशेस ड्रॉ करने की जरूरत नहीं है, यू जस्ट हैव टू नेम इट आल्सो. इफ यू नेम इट, इट विल बी easier and it is acceptable as well. Okay, so food web underwater, you can see that there are the animals which are feeding on plants as well, and there are phytoplankton which are very minute microscopic organisms which are capable of producing chlorophyll. They have chlorophyll in them and they can prepare their own food. They are eaten up by smaller fishes. These smaller fishes are eaten up by a larger fish. ठीक है, वैसा नहीं है कि जो बड़ी फिश है ये सिर्फ फिश को ही खाएगी. It can eat plants as well. ठीक है, so this becomes like a web, and that is why these are called as food web. Now, previously in our slides, we have seen that each and every factor in the food chain and the food web is extremely important. Now, suppose if there is a paddy field where you have a large cultivation of crops, and if this paddy crop is cultivated in a large amount in various states of South India. Now, paddy fields are frequently attacked by grasshoppers. Similarly, frogs are also present in large numbers in the mud of paddy fields, who feed upon the grasshoppers, and snakes are also present therein to feed upon their favorite food, that is the frogs. Now this is a simple food chain that we have learned, how the grasshoppers are feeding onto the crops. The crops are the producers, right? We have learned that. Now the grasshoppers are eaten up by the frogs. The frogs are then eaten up by the snakes. Now, however, if frogs population decline all of a sudden, suppose इसमें से कोई एक चीज खत्म हो जाती है जैसे कि frogs, तो what will happen? The amount of grasshoppers is going to increase tremendously, right? and the amount of snakes in the field are going to decrease and decline. Why? What is the reason? ग्रास हॉपर्स अगर उसे उसका लेवल मेंटेन नहीं किया गया, जैसे कि हम लोगों ने पढ़े थे कि प्रीडेटर्स आर हेल्पिंग टू मेंटेन द लेवल ऑफ हर्बीवोर्स. अगर उन्हें खाया नहीं जाएगा तो हर्बीवोर्स बढ़ जाएंगे एनवायरनमेंट में और वो बैलेंस मेंटेन नहीं होगा. सेम वे अगर ग्रास हॉपर्स बढ़ जाते हैं तो जो पैडी फील्ड के क्रॉप्स है वो डाई हो जाएंगे. दे विल डाई. दे आर गोइंग टू बी ईटन अप बाय द ग्रास हॉपर्स और हम लोगों के लिए खाने के लिए अनाज नहीं बचेगा. क्रॉप्स, यस और नो? अगर क्रॉप्स पूरी तरीके से ग्रास हॉपर्स ही खा लेंगे तो हमारे लिए कुछ बचेगा नहीं. एंड रिमेंबर दैट देयर आर सर्टेन एनिमल्स आल्सो व्हिच आर डिपेंडेंट. लाइक अगर फ्रॉग ही नहीं है तो स्नेक्स आर नॉट गोइंग टू ईट ग्रास हॉपर्स, राइट? ग्रास हॉपर्स स्नेक्स को नहीं खाते. तो क्या होगा यहाँ पर? स्नेक्स के लिए खाने के लिए फ्रॉग्स नहीं है तो स्नेक्स भी भूखे रहेंगे एंड दे विल आल्सो डाई. So this way it is affecting the environment and the entire ecosystem, and this will create an imbalance in the ecosystem, and this is what it is actually important to maintain each and every chain, each and every organism in the food chain or the food web. ठीक है, तो हर एक organism is very important, whether it is biotic or whether it is abiotic. ठीक है. Now, environment is a word that I'm repeating again and again. Okay, in the very beginning, I explained you all the meaning of ecosystem. Now, environment is a very broad concept that is physical and chemical and biological factors affecting the living organism in any possible way is collectively called an environment. ठीक है, जो living things हमारे organisms जो है like plants है, animals है, हम लोग हैं, humans है, everything that comprises comes are living, they come under biotic components. और जो भी non living things है जैसे कि soil, water, air, sun rays, these are all abiotic components. ये दोनों चीजें जब साथ में interact करती है तो उसे हम लोग कहते हैं हमारा environment. ठीक है. There are different types of surroundings depending upon the conditions that are there. जैसे कि डेजर्ट रीजन है तो वहाँ के कंडीशंस अलग होंगे, वहाँ के ऑर्गेनिजम्स अलग होंगे. वी हैव सीन दैट इन इकोसिस्टम आल्सो. So it includes many biotic and abiotic and natural and artificial factors. There are two types of environment that we will be studying. Okay, so I hope the concept of environment is clear to all of you. Now, as I told you that there are two types of environments present. One is natural environment and the other is artificial environment. Now you must be wondering how can you create an artificial environment? Natural environment सबको पता है कि हाँ जो environment तो naturally present होता है, but नहीं, जो environment में हम लोग अब रह रहे हैं naturally ये present नहीं था. जो cities हम लोगों ने build करे हैं ये already ऐसी present नहीं थी. Gardens जो बनाए हैं, ponds और जो तालाब वगैरह जो बनाते हैं, these are all made by humans. These were not naturally present. Yes or no? So this type of places are called as artificial environment. As natural environment is very helpful and it is providing a balance in our environment and our planet. Same way artificial environment is also affecting us. ठीक है, तो नेचुरल एनवायरनमेंट और आर्टिफिशियल एनवायरनमेंट में डिफरेंस समझ में आ गया. इन योर टेक्स्ट बुक इट इज नॉट मेंशन्ड क्लियरली अबाउट योर आर्टिफिशियल एनवायरनमेंट. ठीक है, सिर्फ आर्टिफिशियल एनवायरनमेंट मेंशन किया गया है. तो आपको समझ में आ गया कि आर्टिफिशियल एनवायरनमेंट किसे कहते हैं? जो गार्डन्स बनाए जाते हैं, जो सिटीज में हम लोग रह रहे हैं, विलेजेस में जो हम लोग रह रहे हैं, these are all artificial environment that has been created by us, okay, by the humans. So that is another environment. This is which is naturally present, like forests, like you have plains, mountains. These are all natural environment which was existing naturally. Okay, so the two main types of environment are natural environment and artificial environment. अब ये दोनों environment में biotic और abiotic components present है और ये सब एक दूसरे से interact कर रहे हैं जो हम लोगों के ऊपर इफेक्ट करता है, हमारे एनवायरनमेंट पे इफेक्ट करता है. ठीक है. This brings us to another word that is mentioned in our textbook, that is ecology. Ecology comes from two words, oikos, that is home, and logos, means the study. An ecosystem or ecological system can be defined as a group of living and non-living things dependent on one another and found in a particular type of environment. जैसे कि बायोस्फीयर. हमारा जो बायोस्फीयर है, it is comprising of all the ecosystem of the world. ठीक है. Now under the biosphere you have each ecosystem is made up of biotic factors and abiotic factors. अभी मैं बार बार रिपीट कर रही हूँ तो आप लोगों को ये चीज समझ में आ गई होगी. बायोटिक फैक्टर्स के अंदर कौन कौन आ रहा है? प्रोड्यूसर्स दैट आर द प्लांट्स, कंज्यूमर्स दैट आर हर्बीवोर्स, कार्निवोर्स, ओमनिवोर्स, स्कैवेंजर्स, decomposers that are the bacteria and fungi. Okay, then under abiotic factors comes the non-living things. उसके अंदर क्या क्या आता है? Inorganic substances like soil, water and air. Organic substances like protein, carbohydrates, lipids, etc. Then physical factors, that is the atmosphere, temperature, rainfall, light. These are all abiotic factors. Now I'll just explain you in a very simple example. अभी हम लोगों ने पढ़ चुके हैं कि producers को a very important source of energy. Producers के लिए कौन सी non living या abiotic factor important है? Soil important है ना, वो भी एक non living thing है. एयर एटमॉस्फेयर में से कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड इंपॉर्टेंट है, वो भी नॉन लिविंग थिंग है. सनलाइट इंपॉर्टेंट है, वो भी नॉन लिविंग थिंग है. यस और नो. एंड वाटर इज इंपॉर्टेंट. सो ये सारी नॉन लिविंग थिंग्स जो है एबियोटिक फैक्टर्स आर एक्सट्रीमली इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर द प्रोड्यूसर्स टू प्रोड्यूस कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स एंड एनर्जी फॉर द प्लांट्स. अब ये प्लांट्स क्या करते हैं? एनर्जी जो बनाते हैं, दे स्टोर इट इन द फॉर्म ऑफ कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स इन देयर बॉडी एंड इट इज ईटन अप बाय द कंज्यूमर्स. ठीक है, तो ये कंज्यूमर्स यूज कर रहे हैं. हमारे लिए भी ऑक्सीजन का गैस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. इट इज अ नॉन लिविंग थिंग. सनलाइट इज इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज इट इज अ सोर्स ऑफ विटामिन बी टू अस. यस और नो. सो सनलाइट है, रेनफॉल है, ऑल दीज आर नॉन लिविंग कंपोनेंट्स व्हिच आर एक्सट्रीमली इंपॉर्टेंट. और ये सारी चीजें हैंड इन हैंड चलती है और दोनों को एक दूसरे की जरूरत पड़ती है. Now along with the atmosphere, lithosphere and hydrosphere, there are various gases also, like the carbon gas which is there in our environment, which is extremely useful to us, and it has to go in a cyclic manner so that we keep on getting it, we are using it, and we need to give it back to the environment, and that is how a cycle goes on. ठीक है, तो in this cycle you have learned carbon cycle in our previous standard also. I'm just giving you a gist of what is a carbon cycle. ठीक है, so plants are using carbon dioxide gas which is present in the atmosphere for the process of photosynthesis. Then they give out plants which eat the plant are the animals that eat the plants, and as also we give out carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. ठीक है, through the process of respiration. This way it is maintaining the flow of carbon in the atmosphere and it is forming a cycle, right? So this is called as a carbon cycle. Next, we have the oxygen cycle. Now, as we have learned in our previous class also, that oxygen is present in our atmosphere in about 21%. So, oxygen forms total of 21% of the atmosphere. It is also present in the hydrosphere, that is in water, it is dissolved, and lithosphere. Circulation and recycling of oxygen within the biosphere is called the oxygen cycle. This cycle too includes both the biotic and abiotic components. Oxygen is continuously produced as well as used up by the organisms in the atmosphere. So if you see this cycle, it is very simple to understand. हम लोगों को पता है कि कौन ऑक्सीजन यूज करता है. Every plant and every animal on the planet needs oxygen gas at some or the other point. ठीक है, प्लांट्स को फोटोसिंथेसिस के लिए कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड लगता है, बट रेस्पिरेशन के लिए वो लोग भी ऑक्सीजन गैस ही यूटिलाइज करते हैं. ठीक है, सो प्लांट्स, एनिमल्स, वी ऑल नीड ऑक्सीजन गैस फॉर आवर सर्वाइवल, फॉर द रेस्पिरेशन. ठीक है, इट इज प्रेजेंट इन द एटमॉस्फेयर. सो व्हेन वी आर टेकिंग इन oxygen, we give out carbon dioxide, right? But the plants in the process of photosynthesis, they give out oxygen gas. तो वो लोग क्या कर रहे हैं? ऑक्सीजन गैस का लेवल इंक्रीज कर रहे हैं एटमॉस्फेयर में, क्योंकि हम लोग उसको यूटिलाइज कर रहे हैं. यस और नो? So this is how it keeps on going. Like how you have water cycle, how we have said it about carbon cycle, same way for oxygen. The next and a very important cycle that we have is the nitrogen cycle. Now, why do I say nitrogen cycle is important? Because nitrogen is present in the atmosphere, that is about 78%. ठीक है, सबसे ज़्यादा मिलने वाली गैस हमारे एटमॉस्फेयर में है वो है नाइट्रोजन गैस. Nitrogen forms 78%, that is a maximum proportion of the atmosphere. It is necessary for the maintenance of the cycle of the nature. The circulation and recycling of nitrogen gas into forms of different components to various biotic and abiotic processes in nature is called nitrogen cycle. तो जिस हिसाब से ये जो साइकिल फ्लो होती है फ्रॉम बायोटिक फैक्टर्स टू एबियोटिक फैक्टर्स, फ्रॉम एबियोटिक फैक्टर्स इनटू बायोटिक फैक्टर्स, ये साइकिल कंटिन्यूसली हो रही है और इस साइकिल को हम लोग बोलते हैं नाइट्रोजन साइकिल. So what exactly happens? The atmospheric nitrogen with the help of lightning, जब बिजली कड़कड़ाती है, जो लाइटनिंग होती है, उससे नाइट्रोजन ब्रेक डाउन होता है और वो नाइट्रोजन along with the rain it falls onto the soil. That soil is absorbed by the plant. The plant is eaten up by the animal, and when the animal dies, its body gets decomposed and again nitrogen gas is released into the atmosphere. ठीक है, so this cycle which is going on from the biotic factors to the abiotic factors is called as the nitrogen cycle. Here the next interesting topic is the energy pyramid. As I told you that each and every organism when they consume food they give out energy. ठीक है, like the plants which are preparing the food they give out energy, and how are they giving out energy? Because the consumers are eating it up. ठीक है, so energy is getting transferred from one level to the other. This transfer of energy is called as tropic level. ठीक है, so let's understand about this level also in detail. Now what do you mean by tropic level? Now at the very base you can see plants are there. Okay, so those are autotrophs which produce energy by photosynthesis. That is called as tropic level 1. Each level in the food chain is called a tropic level. A tropic level is the step at which the organism obtains its food in the chain. The amount of matter and energy gradually decreases from producers at lowest level to consumers at the top, which is the highest level. तो आप लोग नीचे देखोगे तो number of plants is much more as compared to the consumers, the tertiary consumers which are at the top. ठीक है, now this each level of the energy pyramid that you see is called as tropic level. The first tropic level has the producers, that are the plants. The second level has herbivores which consume plants. The third level is the carnivores which consume plant eating animals, and the fourth one is large carnivores or omnivores consume smaller animals. ठीक है, so I hope now tropic level is clear to all my students. Next we move on is the pyramid of energy. Now you remember the pyramid that I had shown you all. Here you see at the base is the producer, that is the plant. Now the energy transfers that takes place at each tropic level. There are different levels of energy exchange in the food chain. हर एक लेवल पे एनर्जी एक्सचेंज होती है. ठीक है, फ्रॉम प्रोड्यूसर्स इट गोज ऑन टू द प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर्स, फ्रॉम द प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर्स it goes on to the secondary consumers, from secondary consumer it goes to the tertiary consumer, and each level heat is given out. ठीक है, so there are different levels of energy exchange in the food chain. The initial quantity of energy goes on decreasing at every level. ठीक है, energy keeps on decreasing at each and every level as you go up. Similarly, the number of organisms also decreases from the lowest level to the highest level. Everybody can notice the number of plants are more as compared to the number of deers or tigers or foxes. ठीक है, so this is one more important point that you need to remember. Similarly, the number of organisms also decreases from the lowest level to the highest level. This pattern of energy exchange is an ecosystem, is called a pyramid of energy. ठीक है, simple है. So I hope in this video, I hope the concept of what is the meaning of environment, ecosystem, what is the meaning of ecology, what are biotic, abiotic factors, what is the meaning of food chain, food web, and what are energy pyramid, what are trophic levels. These all concepts are clear to you. In the next coming period, we'll be using these terms in order to understand how to save our environment and how to conserve it and manage our environment. So please see to it that you go through the video again and again in order to understand these concepts. In the next coming period, we'll be learning something new and interesting. Till then, thank you. If you liked our session, please do not forget to subscribe to our channel so that you can share and view the videos that we had today for you. And please do not forget to hit the bell icon so that you remain updated with all the latest videos that we'll be making for our dear students. I hope this session was quite useful to you. In the next coming period, we'll learn something new and interesting. Till then, thank you.